So last question, we just want to know where the school's heading in the direction that Keilor Downs Soccer is going in.
Yep. So I guess as a flow on from Spain, and also in the last couple of years, speaking especially to our girls, we thought, well, how can we go to the next level with this? And at the moment, we're sharing most of our players with clubs. It's fair enough. They play at their clubs in the evening. Their schedules don't always match up perfectly with ours, and sometimes, if they're over worked in their club environment, or they've got games, we'll tell them, look, you need to rest out a session with us, which most of the time they're not happy with. And sometimes it's vice versa. They might have a whole day of school competition with us, and they just have to communicate with their club coach, or we'll communicate with them if we have a relationship with that coach, and just say, look, Emily's done a full day with us today. Probably best thing for her is just do a recovery and a stretch, or she can just stay home and catch up with some sleep. And most of the time clubs are fine. You have the odd occasion where, coaches had something else planned and they just need the player there. And it's hard for kids because kids haven't developed that capacity to say no to adults just yet. It's not yet fully developed, so they just sort of take it. And that's where I think we need to be really careful with how we manage load. So we've managed to get an osteo in at the school who's doing his final year of osteo study. So he comes in once a week and kids can book in appointments with him. We've got a strength and conditioning coach for our senior kids, a specialist goalkeeper coach. So we are trying to make sure that we do a lot of prehab work with them with therabands and activation so that they're not likely to break down. And then on the note of that, we thought to ourselves, well, how do we go to the next level? So how do we then take what we're doing and make it a little bit more full time? So we came up with the concept of potentially entering a team into FFV competitions.
Okay.
So we floated that idea to our principal. We went through the logistics of it. It's not really hard to do because the school's not used on a Sunday. And we've got access to the whole facility, and we've got a really good, grass pitch there, a not as good synthetic pitch beside it in case it ever gets flooded, which is rare. And plenty of parking on site, toilets, change rooms, all the things you need. The schools are set up as schools, places of business. And so we thought of that as an idea, and we started now during COVID-19. We've had even more time to think and plan and put on webinars and seminars for our kids on, mindset, goal setting, the little intricacies of soccer, nutrition, and they've really bought into it. So we thought, well, we'll speak to a few people that know this. So I spoke to Ron Smith. Fortunately, he returned a phone call and had a really good conversation about the old AIS system. Yep. And for those that know Ron, you'll know how passionate he is about youth development and trying to make a difference. And yourself, we've seen all of this stuff about we need to change the game. We need to, the golden generation is giving us advice on how to fix things. And it's true. If we really do want to compete, after I'd seen what's happening in Spain in comparison to here, we do. We need to change things in a different way. So we thought, okay, let's look at the logistics of a school. Kids go to school. They don't change school often. We know that one. If they're already going to school, they're usually, for us, it's a zone school. So kids live in the area. So it's not long travel time for them.
Yep.
If they're already at school, can they train before school, then do their schooling, and then go after school? So we started to look a little bit at Dinamo Zagreb's academy. We looked a bit at Ajax, at Bayern Munich, a few in Sweden as well, because each country has its own pros and cons on how they do things. And we thought, okay, well, if we could potentially enter a team in FFV competition, then the kids would still be playing against their mates from, their clubs. They wouldn't have to do the late night travel to grounds. We've got the pitch to ourselves. So when we do a session, because of our timetabling, it's the squad. If there's 16 kids, you've got a full pitch. And the restrictions at clubland are such that sometimes you might be lucky to get a half pitch to yourself, a quarter pitch. Sometimes you've just got an eighth of a pitch. That's the reality. Like junior participation is huge. So how do we best facilitate development in an environment that's restricted? Well, it's kind of hard in clubland, but you could do it at in a school setting because everything's there. So we thought, all right, if we draw up a timetable, potentially the kids could get up to 7 to 8 sessions a week at school, including their strength and conditioning, their recovery, their technical training, their tactical training, analysis. The other thing is, we've got a drone, we've got several GoPros on massive, extending poles, so we can actually film sessions and we can use it for feedback. We did a lot of that for our boys going to Spain, and it's a huge part of it. You just can't do it at clubland. It's just so restrictive.
Oh yeah.
And you don't have the facility for the whole year to continue training them the whole year as well. So all of these little things that we're falling behind in, we started to start ticking boxes on what we could actually achieve at school. So we're in the process now where we're taking it to school council in the next week and a half just to finalise how it would look.
Yep.
And then we've put in a submission to FFV to have an under-18s boys team next year where we'd play 14 and 15-year-old boys, predominantly some 16-year-old boys, and they'd play, a couple of years above.
Yep.
And potentially either a senior women's team or also an under-18 girls team where we would do the exact same thing with our girls. Now, the beauty of it is we would treat it effectively as a conveyor belt where a few phone calls to a few different coaches that you meet around the traps or your networking it's just a question of, okay, let's say, for example, as a coach in State 1, he's just lost his left back.
Yes.
He makes a phone call to me and he says, listen, if any of your boys up to standard to maybe push into State 1 as a backup left back or even come into my first team, I'll say, yeah, look, I've got this boy and I've got this boy. One's more of a centre back but with a left foot but could convert into a left back, and one's an actual left back. How about you take them for a week and let them train with you during the evenings, because it's not going to affect their schooling, and we'll give them a rest from their actual school training. Go and train with them, go on a trial, let them know how it is to play with men as well, because that's really important for the development of young players. Is when you step into a senior environment, it is performance-based, and that's where you should be as a coach, looking at performance. So we thought, okay, that could work, because then if we lose that player, we don't lose him, we just move him on to the next coach. We move him on to a level where he's ready to play. Now, if from that level he can then push on and get into the NPL, or even if he jumps ahead of, let's say an NPL coach gets a couple of injuries in this area and he makes the phone call. If that player's been training, 6 to 8 sessions a week, he's going to be super fit. You'd think his technique and touch would be up to standard. And if we're doing the right things as youth coaches there, then we'll be preparing them for their next phase, which is that performance phase. So that's the theory behind it. And from what we're getting feedback in terms of our kids and the parents is they actually want to give it a go. It's going to cost them less than a third of what they're paying at NPL, because there's no, like, for example, I'm there anyway. So if I'm there as a teacher, for me to come an hour earlier and do a morning session or stay an hour later is not a big difference to me. I'm usually there doing extra stuff with them anyway. So there's no have to pay coaches extra. All the money goes directly back to them. So whatever they pay in terms of rego or any kind of fees, there's no senior team to pay, wages to. It's all going directly back into them. And then we can potentially take them to more tournaments and competitions at end of year, or going things like Kanga Cup or Gorilla Cup. And then you start to get closer. So in Europe, you find that most kids, when they're in that bracket of 12 to 16, they're playing between 45 and 65 matches. We're not getting close to that here in Australia, because our season's a 6-monther. So if we added the say it's 22 games in a 12-team competition for under 18 boys, you then go to a tournament where you get 5 or 6 games. You have your school games as well. You have a couple of midweek friendly matches against teams that need a game, or you're starting to get closer to that number. Plus you're adding the training sessions to model what's happening overseas. All of a sudden, maybe that gap over a period of time is going to start to decrease. And we might actually see some players that are getting ready for that next level, rather than what's happening at the moment is we're finding it hard to push the senior players into teams because maybe they're not training enough. Maybe it's different. It's a different world. The landscape's not the same. They're not playing outside and doing all that repetition stuff, perhaps like they used to when I was growing up, in my generation, for example, because technology is there and it is a distraction. We've all found it now during COVID-19 that it's hard to not be on technology. You and I are on technology as we speak. So, and that's something we want to do, because we don't look at sort of talent selection. We look at talent identification. It's very different. So talent selection, you pick that big, strong kid and play him because he's going to win you the game, or she's going to win you the game. She's fast. Let's play long balls. Yeah, we can identify that. Most people, even if they have no soccer brain, can watch a game and they can pick it out and say, yeah, that kid's good. Yeah. Talent identification is you're looking at what they could be. So you're actually planning for the future. And that takes a lot more challenge and effort. And I guess from a professional point of view, my profession is education, where I am planning people for the future anyway. I have the advantage of being in a job where I'm doing a lot of professional development just on my teaching, which if you have a look at it, crosses over into coaching. So when someone starts talking about growth mindset or goal setting, we're already doing it at school level. We've been doing it for years. Now we're starting to show kids how to apply it to football, and you're starting to see results. And we've got we just did a reflective task for kids over this COVID-19 period where they were able to analyze their own habits and behaviors, what they're doing well at home, what they needed to improve on. And some of the responses we got from our kids was absolutely phenomenal, because they're so comfortable in realizing that failure is normal and mistakes are normal, that they're happy to write their truth rather than say, you've been in that situation when you've played at a club level. You coach, you're injured, you can barely walk, but you tell your coach you're fine. You're not really being honest, and you end up causing yourself some long-term pain. Well, they're at the point now where they can message us, 24/7 using various school platforms and say, look, I'm not feeling the best. Can we have a chat? And that's the advantage, I guess, that we've got at a school level, that we can actually look after the person, and the player's starting to take care of his or herself. So, yeah, in a nutshell, if it all goes to plan, we'll be the first school, from what FFV have told me after a conversation with them, to actually have teams in the competition. And I think it's potentially a really good starting point, because not every kid can do this and not every school will do this. But if you had maybe 3 or 4 of them across the state, then maybe we could help with talent development for the future generations of our Matildas and our Socceroos. That's what we're here for. Like that's my profession, is to work with young people and guide them and help them discover themselves so that they become at least good people. That's my objective. Be a good person. Be a good person. If you become a good footballer along the way, then that's a huge bonus. If you become respectful, you know how to set goals, you've got a healthy lifestyle, you can work in a team, you've got resilience, you've got toughness, you've got a growth mindset, you understand leadership and the differences in how you can lead, sometimes by example, sometimes by voice, sometimes just being a silent leader. If we can teach them this stuff, then we've done a fantastic job, because if you look at the stats of who makes it professionally in the UK, the numbers are tiny, and that's at the top level. The UK is, like, England is the hub of football in terms of professional clubs. There's 94, 95 clubs there, and it's hard. It's not easy. It's something that, sometimes maybe the kids, because of FIFA and the fact that we're quite global here, we get excited. I'm going to play for Manchester United. Okay, how about you be the best player in your under-13s team first? And then from that, maybe you get selected in the NTC or a state squad. And then from that, maybe a Victoria City sees you. From that, you're the best player there. Maybe you get yourself an NPL senior contract. And then from that, maybe you get into the A-League. And then from that, maybe you get to the Premier League. Like you look at an Aaron Moy or Mila Yedinak, these guys that have had to do it the hard way.
Yeah.
That's the reality. Like, it's great to have dreams. We all have dreams. One day I want to be Pep Guardiola. No, joking. But we have our dreams, but you need to know the process of achieving it. It's just small steps in the right direction. And that's something we found with this goal setting. We also took a lot of stuff from Bill Beswick, who's a brilliant psychologist, who does this thing called the talent profile, where a player is able to look at their software, the things that they can change, so lifestyle, mental, and their emotional state, and then also their hardware, the physical, the genetics that you've already got. If you're quick, you're quick. If you're slow, you're slow. So if we can sort of help them with the software, and then they can apply that to the hardware, so the physical, the technical, the tactical, then we start to create some pretty well-rounded young people that are hopefully some of them will be good footballers. And if the reality is 1 or 2 of them get to a professional level, we're extremely happy. As a school, we'd be delighted. And as a school, you're happy to see your kids do well and get a good ATAR or do fantastically well at their VCAL and get themselves an apprenticeship and find a pathway. And then hopefully the holistic part of this is that these kids are then able to come back and talk to this younger generation. So the girl that I spoke about early, right in the first part of the piece, where she she was part of the Catalyst thing, she's now a coach for us, and she's studying teaching, and she's playing at Calder. So she's a really good role model for the kids, and the kids love her because she's one of them. She came through the school, did her 6 years there, and now she's one of our paid coaches, and she's fantastic. And she's learning, more about her craft as a coach. And she's got the freedom. Like, we have our own curriculum. We drew up a fairly detailed curriculum of just our guidelines and principles of play that we want to have in our sessions. But then we leave the coaches to do their own thing. And some coaches are really good at 1v1, so we leave them be. The goalkeeper coach has his methodology for goalkeeping. We leave him be. That's it. You trust people. You have your process, and the kids, obviously, they've bought into the program. So that for us, it's now just a case of how do we keep extending ourselves as people? How do I become, how do I challenge myself? Or I'll give myself more work. We'll start a club team, and that'll take over my social life. But it's fine because we're willing to do it,
Exactly.
and it seems like our kids are willing to be part of that process,
That's it.
and I think we could really do some incredible things for these kids
Mm-hmm.
and for the community, and also for football in Victoria and Australia.
Brilliant. All right. I'm really looking forward to following the story and see where this goes, and hopefully it'll be up and running next year. But yeah, so really
Yeah,
looking forward to it.
that'll be the aim. We'd love to have a chat with you and show you how it looks,
Yeah, for
and we're
sure.
going to we document everything anyway. So we do a lot of analysis of ourselves as coaches, record ourselves coaching, and
Yep.
listen back to it, and give each other feedback, evaluations, just like we expect our kids to do.
Mm-hmm.
And if we do get it up and running, there'll be a lot of. I'm sure we'll make thousands of mistakes because we all do,
Yeah,
but in our defence, it'll always be in the best interests of the kids and the program itself.
that's it.
And I think if you've got that approach in life and you're trying to follow your principles. I'm a huge fan of Bill Walsh, the ex-NFL coach who basically turned around the San Francisco 49ers, and he
Yep.
based it all upon changing the culture of the place. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what we've got in place now. And if we do this, if we get this opportunity from Football Victoria, then I'm positive that we'll be able to just continue what we've done here. And yeah, it'll be an interesting story either way. And hopefully maybe, in the future you could even speak to some of the kids rather than myself, because at the end of the day, it's all about them.
Exactly.
And we really want them to, we expect them to drive our sessions. We do a lot of work on removing our influence from the session as a coach in terms of our voice, and we try and pass that on to them. And that's something you learn. I remember my first couple of years of coaching, you bark instructions because you imitate what you see on YouTube.
Exactly.
But really, how much are they learning? How much do they learn when you tell them what to do rather than they discover it for themselves? We only really
Completely
learn when we're able to reflect, So
yeah, I completely agree with that.
yeah. So yeah, we'll work on it. We'll keep going with it, and we'll keep trying to find new ways to stimulate ourselves and stimulate our students.
That's the way.
That's it.